Hey everybody, welcome to the DBS Films Podcast. My name is Kellen. With me as always is my brother Brendan, and together we make movies with a DBS film. Today we are going to do the final part on The Haunting of the Murder House, where we go ahead and discuss what our plans are for the release. Right now we're kind of honing in on the final cut. We do have some big things coming up in the next few weeks, so we just kind of want to highlight what we're hoping for, what we're kind of expecting, since it was based on the Suicide House. So just where we're at mindset wise. But we also want to talk about a potential Kickstarter campaign that we're doing, especially with our super fans as well. And before we begin, as always, check out our Discord channel, guys. That is the place to be. We can post all of our information there. We do a lot of fun things. We're actually playing Dead by Daylight, which is a really fun game. So we're doing really cool stuff. So you guys can join us, be part of the action, be in our movies. Just find our links online. So as I was mentioning, Brendan, really for this, I kind of want to get our overall mindset. I think this one's unique for a few reasons. This is a movie that we remade. So let's go ahead and hop into that first. The Haunting of the Suicide House is basically a similar premise. We've mentioned many times before, you can watch The Haunting of the Suicide House, you can watch The Haunting of the Murder House, and you would never be able to tell the same production team did it. But I think this is something you're going to see throughout the process of DBS, where we are going to revisit ideas that we can clearly see have some traction to them and look at just making them better. We always say there's a 2.0 version, 3.0 version, and really it goes back to budget. But do you want to talk about, how that mindset of scaling them, and then why The Haunting of the Suicide House was so special, in the sense that you always mentioned this is the one we're going to redo pretty much immediately?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons that you want to diversify, and one of the reasons that you want to have as many, films at your disposal is not only just learn, but you find the ones that perform well. Like, these are all sort of market tests. I'm trying to just gather data, see what people, really like. And you think, oh, well, Brendan, like, aren't all your movies going to perform the same? And no, it's really not true at all. Out of the 10 that we've done, I'd say probably 2 or 3 really carried almost 80% of the revenue, as opposed to, the other 7 or 8. So you really want to try and find the 1 or 2 movies that people really resonate with, that can sell, that you can get your money back, and try and focus on those. And in this case, it was, The Haunting of the Suicide House really did a lot of work. It made its money back really, really quickly. And it's a very easy movie to make because it's one location. You can black out the house and you just kind of get your actors in there and you let them kind of go. So I always wanted to do this one again. I was excited to do it. I think the screenplay is a million times better on this one. I think the footage is really, really good. And the initial data that I've gotten from, just testing a lot of split tests and, doing our due diligence as far as blurb and cover and title, it's been the best performing one so far. So I have high hopes. I don't see why there would be kind of any issues. That being said, I don't know what's going to happen with this one, but the initial conversations that I've had with a lot of people, as far as like distribution companies and especially film festivals just recently, there's buzz with this one. So I feel good with it. I'm going to knock on wood right now that this thing doesn't just completely flop. And you never know, there's a lot of variables in there that you just can't handle or can't control. But I feel pretty confident. I'm very happy with the finished product. So I think at the very, very minimum, if this launch fails, if this movie doesn't do as well as, some of the other ones, I got better. And once again, it goes back to, that's all I'm trying to do. So if I got better, if I could look back at it and say, look, I made a movie, I got better. It was better than, in my opinion, The Girl in Camera 13. I'm accomplished. I did what I set out to do.
Yeah, I mean, it really is the case where, we want to look back at the movies, want to set ourselves up for as best as possible, launch. And really one of the ways to ensure that is, duplicating a premise that was easy to sell, in the sense that people really were able to resonate with it. They engaged in it, and it ended up being, one of the most successful ones we had. And, if you're familiar with the Discord, I least favorite one is Haunting the Suicide House. So it also shows you just how much audience wise, compared to what's going to work or not. And we fully embrace it. We fully say, hey, like we're better at storytelling, we're better at filming now, we're better at post production, we're better at all of these things. Let's take a crack at this one again. And I think it is something in the indie universe that people really shy away from. And I highly recommend, find ideas that work, find ideas that were good, and see how you can improve them. Because this is a weird product where you basically have to solidify it, where like an artist or a painter, you kind of have a lot more flexibility when it comes to revisions and the entire process that goes into making a film. You're really kind of limited unless you have those, endless budgets that you can get just for large feature films. So as an indie production, you really got to make sure that you're going in there and you're understanding that why always make it such a risk with the idea or concept you do, when you can simply test your skills by really taking a concept that works and seeing how much you've improved. It's almost kind of like doing it on the same playing field. You get to really kind of look at the results from it. Now, with that being said, I want to kind of touch on the success of The Girl in Cabin 13 to kind of see what's setting us up for this distribution, because I have the same exact mindset that you do, where we already won in the sense that it's better than The Girl in Cabin 13. And I'm almost kind of getting to the point where, well, it's almost going to be out of our hands in a bit. So do you want to kind of talk about how, with The Girl in Cabin 13 being so successful, we want to continue to see kind of more of that level and more of that development? Because again, we understand it's out of our hands, but still, it really is a motivation, seeing that the improvement in skill and production leads to an improvement with just the overall business functionality.
Yeah, I mean, working with distribution companies, working with, film festivals and people who are going to be responsible for, visibility for your film is a skill in itself. I think a lot of filmmakers, they finish a movie and they're like, all right, that's it, I'm done. They don't want to market their movie. They don't want to work at distribution deals. And they don't really push the film festivals as hard as they really could. And I think that that's a big time issue, because honestly, this is where you really need to push your product. You finally have something to, push out there, and you want to get the feedback, you want to get reviews, you want to set yourself up to succeed. And I think a lot of these indie filmmakers, when distribution companies come to them, they take the first deal and they're just like, I want to be done with this. I'm done with this process. I'm done with this movie. This distribution company comes to me and they say, look, I can get you on all these platforms. I can get you on the cable networks. I can get you on all the AVOD platforms. Just sign on the dotted line. And they're just like, sure. And a lot of it's a dream for a filmmaker to, sign with the distribution company, because it's prestigious. You're going there, you can say, I'm on, Fandango, I'm on Amazon, I'm on iTunes, I'm on Apple TV, I'm on all these platforms. And they just fail to read the contracts, and they just, put themselves in a place to, it's going to be difficult to, recoup some of that money that they think they're going to get. So I think right now is like one of the most crucial moments for your filmmaker, because you do want to make sure you're getting visibility, but you also want to make sure you're getting paid for your visibility. And this time is a little bit different. I think we have something that's hard data that, companies can look back on, and that's Girl in Cabin 13. I can say, look, we have a platform, we have people who absolutely love our stuff. And, we know how to market this stuff. We had an independent film be the #1 movie on Tubi, which is a massive, massive platform, fastest growing AVOD platform. Fox just bought it. There's a ton of amazing movies on there. I think we were like right next to like M. Night Shyamalan and Stephen King and all these huge horror movies for multiple weeks at a time. And, really distribution companies, they want to make sure they're pushing a good product, but they just want to make sure they're getting their money back, because they're investing a ton of money, in you, the filmmaker, and your film, and not only just capital, but their time as well. So they want to make sure they're getting some kind of return. The fact is, I could go to them and say, look, this is what Cabin 13 did. This one's going to be even better. The feedback's even better. And the data that I'm getting, just preliminary data, is even better than, Girl in Cabin 13. So having all that stuff and being able to go to the table, I feel more confident that we'll get a deal. a better deal than Girl in Cabin 13. That being said, a better deal is not always, the one we want to go for. I want to get, obviously the most visibility, but there's certain platforms that I think perform better with our movie. And I want to get this in our fans' hands as quickly as possible. A lot of the time it just takes almost like 8 months to a year to get this thing back. And I really would love like a Halloween release for this one. So that's something that, I'm going to try and push for, to just try and get it in our fans' hands as quickly as possible so we can move on to the next one. We can get feedback on this one.
I mean, it's always the case, like going from not doing something to doing something is the biggest experience you'll ever have, especially that first time. That's the one where, again, we have a lot more experience when it comes to business and we understand things. But, I really do think since filmmaking, most filmmakers, 1, 2, maybe 3 features, typically it's like the one and done cases. They get over the finish line and then they're so exhausted and they're so beaten down and they don't know how the business element of things work. Because again, distributors, they do get a pretty, pretty diverse rap when it comes to yay or nay in the indie film community. But I think a lot of times people discount just the other side of it, because the people who are the most vocal are going to be the indie filmmakers. The people who are going to be least vocal are going to be the distribution companies, just for business purposes. You don't want to go out there and kind of say things. But really what it comes down to is, yes, these distributors are investing their time, their efforts. They have so many independent films on their table that have, first time independent filmmaker. And what we're trying to do is basically diversify ourselves and say, listen, this is where we're at. This is our track record. This is our history. This is our portfolio. This is why you want to work with us. This is our community of super fans. These are all of these things going for us. And I think far too late in the process do people and filmmakers, realize how powerful a community is. And this is kind of one of the bigger things I wanted to talk about on this episode is, I think one of the more powerful things that we have now going into the launch of the Murder House, going into the distribution talks of Murder House, going into all of the elements of it. So literally the second we got into post-production, again, we got into post-production in November, we still didn't have this Discord community, this growing super fans, until about March when we started. And, now we finally are crossing those big thresholds. But, do you want to talk about all of the benefits that come from having this community, and specifically how it's going to help out just every time we go to the negotiation table with these distributors and just with anyone in general? Because this is what they're looking for. They're looking for essentially a pre-packaged model. If we come there and we say we have eyeballs ready to go, just point to the platform, why it's a win-win for everyone involved.
Yeah, it's super big. And I think it's, what a lot of the higher production companies do, the higher level production companies, as far as like Blumhouse, they do a very good job of marketing this stuff. They have their built-in fan base. It's just not as, granular as much as ours is, where we're actively interacting and working with our community and doing fun things. Same thing with A24. I think A24 is the perfect example of, almost a community focused film studio where they have just this almost cult like following. If you look at their social media posts, and they're all on Reddit, and their ability to just release almost anything, and their fan base just eats it up. They just love the A24 stuff. So that engagement is super powerful, because that, no matter what you do, you're going to have fans, right there behind it. And I think we're just taking that business model to the next level, where we're cultivating, we're building a community, but we're also interacting with the community, and we're making them a part of the filmmaking process. And I think that's the difference is, A24 works on like a top-down service level, and they may do like fan giveaways and fan meetups. I'm not, super, I don't really know what A24 does on, a specific fan base level, but I don't think it's what we're doing. We're casting people from our Discord. We're interacting with people on our Discord. We're watching movies with our Discord. And literally the fans have direct feedback to myself when I ask them questions, which characters they like, which characters they didn't like. I go on Q&A sessions, and, I try and ask and figure out what the fans liked or didn't like, or how they would make the movie better. So, whether you're a fan of the movies or if you're just a filmmaker in general, because I think honestly, if you're a filmmaker, you should just come into the Discord because you could see how we operate. I'm posting different trailer cuts, different cuts of the movie. Q&A sessions are in there, and just general feedback on story and script is all very powerful stuff. And I think it just, when the fans can experience a little bit of the journey, I think it makes your bond just that much better. It's more of a family than anything. And I'm really excited to do the festival run for this next movie because, you know, I get excited. Everyone in my company gets excited to, win these awards, but these are almost the super fans winning the awards as well, because they gave me direct feedback on how to make this movie better. And I guarantee you, we wouldn't have been up for as many awards, or we wouldn't win as many awards if I didn't get that feedback. So everything that, has gone into this movie, the blood, sweat, and tears, um, as the community has been a part of it all the way through. And I think that, that's powerful to go through a journey, to go through a battlefield with essentially the DBS army is just, it's a game changer. And I'm really looking forward to, the future projects. Cause once again, like Kel said, this one, they kind of got in maybe in the second quarter. And I think we can, watching them, work with the shapeshifter from concept all the way through, I think it's going to make it that much more powerful.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. And like I said, this is something where I highly recommend any filmmaker out there, try and start building your community. I think we really hit home on a few different things. Horror movies is definitely a genre people like, and we're passionate. I mean, we're very, very passionate about it. And these people are helping us get to the point where we can do what we want to do on a daily basis and live our dream. And really, we're going to reward people who do that, mainly because they're passionate as well. Like you said, we started seeing more and more how this is developing, how they're giving us this feedback, how they're starring in the roles now, and how we're looking to cast them because of how passionate they are. And I would say not only the feedback element, but then going and sitting down on the table and, saying we have the DBS Army. What's it going to look like in a year from now? What's it going to look like in 5 years from now? So I think one of the misconceptions that people have, and I think this is another thing, I'd like you to kind of touch on for a little bit, is I think filmmakers think it's the distribution job to get people to watch your movie, when really the distribution's job is just kind of to connect the dots in the funnel of the revenue. And I mean, yes, they have marketing promotions, but how do we look at a post-production when it comes to, again, optimizing for the covers with split testing and whatnot? I mean, we have a full engine ready to go for this marketing, and now we have the super fans ready to even push it to the next level. So do you kind of want to talk about what you see in the indie film, like sphere of how a lot of people are almost like, okay, it's done now, you take it, when that's really not the case at all. You really have to run with it, and you really have to push it in order for it to get to the results that you see with like Girl in Cabin 13.
Yeah, I think it's a three-pronged issue. I think number one, the story or the pacing of the movie is just not where it needs to be to have a distribution deal in place. Once again, if you're an indie filmmaker, you're going to be making probably 80 or 90% of your money from AVOD platforms. So that's advertising. People are watching ads. You're getting revenue from ads. Unless you land with a Netflix, Hulu, Shudder, or one of the larger tier, streaming platforms, which is just SVOD, which is people are paying a subscription to watch this stuff. The majority of your money is going to come from AVOD. And a lot of, I love indie movies. I really do. I really try and find a lot of indie stuff to watch, especially stuff under $1 million. And a lot of it just suffers from a lot of pacing issues, or it's just such a unique and crazy concept that's difficult to mass market. So, a distribution company may pick it up, but it's just going to be hard for them to just push it. I think the second issue, what Kel said was, all right, you have a movie and maybe it's paced well, but then you have a cover that's just, it doesn't look professional. You have a title that's very unique and kind of hipstery, and people can't really remember what it is because maybe you just like that name, but it doesn't really, spark curiosity in your, your audience. And then you have a blurb that's just all over the place that may not tell what the story is about. And, this phrase, you can't judge a book by the cover, is completely false. When you're competing against all these other movies, just go on Tubi, and what is their like homepage? It's just a whole bunch of movie covers. So if you can't compete with those covers, if your movie poster doesn't look professional, you're already on strike one. And then if someone clicks on it and you have this crazy massive blurb that's not split tested, that doesn't really tell the audience what your movie's about, people just aren't gonna watch it. And the same thing with the trailer. If you have a trailer that's not explaining exactly what your movie's about, that's not building an air of mystery or suspense or horror, you're gonna have a hard time getting people to watch that trailer and then go and click on your movie. So I think a lot of that stuff also, causes issues for the distribution company. Distribution companies want stuff that's already split tested. They know it's going to sell, that all they have to do is give it visibility and it gets organic traffic. I think a lot of indie films that I see just don't have that ability to get organic traffic, meaning traffic that you're not paying for, or traffic that you're not actively, as far as like friends and family, getting them to watch. You're trying to get people from that have never heard of you, never heard of your movie before, watching this movie just by going on Tubi or going on Amazon or these other platforms and just downloading this movie. And the third thing, is the point that Kel brings up, is that most when they give, most filmmakers, when they give their movie a distribution company, they're like, all right, my job is done. And it really shouldn't be. You should be building a community, you should be working Twitter, you should be working Instagram, you should be running your own Facebook ads. In my mind, the distributor's job is to get you visibility, get you on the platform, and get you visibility on these platforms. I really wouldn't hold it to the distribution companies to market your movie, because you don't know how much love and attention they're giving it to you. Because usually a lot of these distribution companies have tons of other titles and movies. And guess what? They're going to spend the most money on the movies that give them the best ROI. So if there's a movie out there that has that organic reach, that's built to sell, essentially, that's where all their marketing dollars are going to go, because it's just business 101. They're not going to try and push, a rock up a hill if it's just a very difficult movie to sell. They're just going to cut their losses on it. And unfortunately, those losses come in the form of marketing expenses and other expenses that are baked into the contract that the indie film maker signs. So I think, you're really in charge of marketing. You should always have that mindset that your job is to market your film. The distributor's job is to get the film up on different platforms and give you visibility. So I think if you can go into that and address these problems, you'll just have a much better job and a much better time, succeeding with the actual marketing and, distribution aspect of this process.
Yeah, it really is something where so much of it, if you don't have this final stage in mind, almost kind of like the editing process, we say, hey, you gotta have the editor's mindset. Well, one step forward is the distribution's mindset, the business mindset. And at the end of the day, being able to figure out what that end product is allows us to continue to make them, and allows us, as we scale up, it's going to give us the ability to take more risk with the movies we do, make things better. It's something where we want to make sure we have very firm footing before we take the next step. That's just the business minds that we have. And being able to understand from the very beginning now, because we've been through the process, I think that's why we're very optimistic about The Haunting of the Murder House. It's because we've been through these processes. We have a much better understanding. We have the strongest community that, by far, and who knows by the time it finally is released what it's going to look like numbers wise. So we have a lot going for it when it comes down to that. One thing I really kind of wanted to highlight now is one of the issues in just kind of filmmaking in general is it's a tougher one to just build a business on because of the delayed timeframes. In one of my DBS production updates, I mentioned my least favorite part of the film industry is how slow everything is, how slow it is to just get turnaround on things, how slow the process is. And, we're seeing it a lot, but you want to just kind of talk about the delays when it comes to being able to get a cash flow off of a product, and how that becomes such an issue when it comes to just, being able to fund another movie and moving forward. Because then I want to talk about how potentially we're looking at Kickstarter to help alleviate a little bit of that process, just to kind of add into it. So, do you want to talk about just the cycle and how long it takes to even kind of start looking at recouping your money?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a production company, like you almost have to be making 4 to 6 movies a year to just get steady cash flow. If you're an indie filmmaker and if you're an indie filmmaker, you're essentially your own production. And to get cash flow is just going to be almost impossible for you. Where I think like the sweet spot where you're actually, getting movies completed and we're getting paychecks in, a monthly basis, you need 4 to 6 movies. So it's definitely difficult. It's definitely frustrating because most filmmakers, if they can make one movie in a year, and that's from, screenplay to actual finished product, that's actually pretty good. Most most indie filmmakers probably take about 2 years. I probably say it's on average to get a completed project, just because post is going to take so long and the screenplay is going to take long, and there's going to be pickups and everything as far as shooting. But once you're done with that, excuse me, once you're done with that, it's going to take you 6 to 8 weeks. So this is once you give a final product, you're like, all right, I'm ready to go. The fast thing is to go straight to a distribution company and do 6 to 8 weeks. Most filmmakers are going to do a festival circuit. If you want to do a festival circuit properly, it's going to take you a whole year because you want to stack your releases. You want to try and go for the big fish first, and then, move your way down the list. So now you're looking at, so say it takes you a year to make a film. You finally get it done. If you want to do a proper festival run, it's going to take you a year. If you decide not to do the festival run, you're going to look at distribution companies. It's going to take you 6 to 8 weeks to negotiate and figure out which, distribution company is right for you. Then it's going to take you about 3 months to pass quality control and get the distribution company all lined up. And then it's going to take another 3 months for the film to get a release date, essentially where the distribution company delivers all the deliverables to the streaming companies, and the streaming companies all get them ready and they launch on a specific date. So on the faster version, you're looking about, 16 to 18 months from start to finish for a film. The longer version could be almost 2.5 years. And that's just getting, the movies on the distribution or on the platforms. Then the distributors will pay quarterly. But that's not even the worst part. They're paying quarterly on the streaming platforms, who also pay out quarterly. So there's another 3 months delay. So, I mean, you could really be looking at 3.5 years before you get any kind of paycheck from your movie. And it's super frustrating. And I'm trying my best to try and, actively find ways to get paid quicker. But to my knowledge, everything just runs on a quarterly basis. Reporting is done quarterly basis, and it's just difficult unless you're getting paid up front to just get any kind of cash flow going, which is why you have to have a lot of movies to succeed in this industry. If you're going to be a production company or just an indie filmmaker, and you're going to try and get this to generate revenue for your yourself and your company to actually live off the money and revenue that your films produce.
It really is the case of, and coming from another business background where, like, you can't make plans if you have to wait 3.5 years to see what your revenue is going to look like. You can't forecast, you can't be able to take that next step and move forward. And, I think realistically, the reason for that is, it's so unclear. And I think that's what makes this one of the harder industries to break into. We're really trying to build up this pipeline now for us to kind of have, a bit of sustainability when it comes to the number of films we're doing. But one thing I did kind of want to mention that kind of stemmed out of us having a community was something that's really popular in the indie film scene is Kickstarter or Indiegogo or any of these crowdsourcing platforms. I would say any film funding thing that you look up online or that you go and you take a look at is really going to be something where that's going to be the number one thing to go for. And we always, we never really did it because I think the biggest things is, we were using this for learning. And also, we never want to be tied attached to something, because a lot of these films, they just don't kind of end up getting made. So we're looking at doing it now, but more so as almost kind of a reward for our community, in the sense that it's an easy way for us to do a merch drop. We've had so many people come to us and say, hey, we want to help you, and support this. So I kind of just want to get your thoughts in general on crowdfunding. And then I think how our approach is different. I'll kind of go into a little bit more detail, but overall, how do you see crowdfunding when it comes to indie films? Because it is one of the more popular avenues.
I mean, I think it's a great avenue. I've been waiting to do Kickstarter and Indiegogo because I've seen a lot of people, have success with this. The difference was I really did not want the weight and responsibility of taking somebody's money or taking somebody's donation and not being able to give them a product. And I probably would venture that, especially in the filmmaking aspect of, Indiegogo and Kickstarter, a lot of people just take money and then they just never release the movie, or it takes a long time to do it. And, I've talked to actors who have been part of Kickstarters as far as like a production has done it or a director's done it, and they've just never seen the light of day. And I would not feel good with that. I feel morally that would not be, something that I'd feel comfortable with doing. That being said, I'm in the point now where I've never lost a movie. And I feel really good with my ability to tell a story. So if there was a story that, gathered fan interest and people are willing to do, like what Kel said, a merch drop or just be a part of the movie, or, contribute because you like the idea or concept or were excited to see the movie, I think it would definitely help out. It helped fill in the gaps of the cash flow issue that we were talking about before. But I think, we're always going to make these movies. So the Kickstarter, the company wouldn't depend on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, but I do think it's a good way, like Kel said, to just reward the people who just want to help us out and give a little bit more. So if you want to, have a little bit more access, or you're invested in the story and you want to kind of contribute, this is the best way to do it. And I would feel completely comfortable with it because, number one, I know that I'm going to get a product up, but I think we could do some really creative stuff as well to reward the fans. I think it's a really good idea. As far as like, do you want some merch, or do you want to, maybe be a part of the movie or have some kind of credit in the movie? There's a lot of cool stuff that we can do that just builds the community interaction and builds our fan base and rewards, the people who, have a little bit of extra cash that, they want to throw to a good cause and help us out. I think it's a cool thing. It's a win-win for both. And I feel as long as we both feel that we're getting value from it, I'm being able to produce a movie and give value back to the fans, and the fans are getting value back from us. As long as it's mutually beneficial, I think it's definitely something that we should explore and something that we should try out, because I think, there's a lot of endless possibilities, and I think we can do some really cool stuff together.
I completely agree. And I think this has been something where the more the communities develop and grow, and the more I've been like, okay, we need to kind of do something like this. Because as you mentioned, I do see it as a way to reward the people who want to get in and just, support us in different ways. And big thing for me, as always, with our Discord channel, it doesn't cost you a dime to be a super fan. You can help us out in so many different other ways. But with that being said, it is something that, we do have a lot of times where people are like, hey, what's the best way we can help out here? What can we do? I've already bought the DVD, I bought all your movies. And this is something to kind of give them just a little bit extra accessibility. But again, this is us doing all of the hard work first and building this community, then launching a Kickstarter, versus I think the negative experience I think most filmmakers might have is launching the Kickstarter and thinking that's going to create everything around it. So I think that's going to be our different approach. And even for the first Kickstarter we're doing, it's not even going to be for making a new movie. It's going to basically be for promoting our current movie. How can you help us promote this movie, just to kind of gain buzz in a different element, with the idea that we might look at, having more theatricals when we push it. Again, there's a lot up in the air. It comes down to distribution and things like that. But we're looking at two things that are different. The first one to me is we're saying, hey, here's a finished product, which, as my brother mentioned, by that time, if you're on Kickstarter, you've typically already done your Kickstarter, and, maybe you have a product, or maybe it doesn't get there. It just gets lost in the void. We have a guaranteed product that people can support. And the way we're going to do it is look at, helping give back to the community, whether it's merch drop, whether it's different things. So I think it's our creative way of figuring out how we can increase this cycle, because if we can almost essentially have a guaranteed amount coming from the Kickstarters, which again are rewards. So, we're only going to get a fraction of that after handing that out. But do you see the benefit in having that guaranteed return? I think is kind of one thing that I wanted to really point back to, because again, it's the forecasting. If it takes a year, if that's just the industry, it takes a year before we get the first check, fine. But how do we have a project that can be cash flow generating as soon as possible, just so we can add more things to it? Because again, right now the business is perfectly self-sustaining, but this is just a way, as any business should be looking, that you can add a benefit to it. So do you want to talk about how any indie filmmaker should be looking at maximizing revenue, whether it is merch, whether it is anything? Because again, it builds the community, and every dollar counts to getting back and just, giving you more solid footing for making another one.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's crucial. I think, as long as it's beneficial. I think my biggest issue with a lot of the stuff that I see in the indie community is it's one way. It's just the filmmaker collecting money, and then they may or may not release a movie. And if they don't release a movie, I don't know what the Kickstarter or Indiegogo terms are, but I feel like a lot of these people, they donate to this stuff and they just don't get, value in return. And I think that's a really, poor choice. As far as like you're trying to build this community, and then you're kind of, ripping them off a little bit. And I never wanted to do that. And I don't want that pressure on me to, do that. But I think at this point where our stories would benefit with just some small things, and some of the small things can come from just a little bit of extra cash flow. And that's just usually special effects. It's cooler locations. And then, maybe some actor upgrades or some equipment upgrades to just really give us like a little bit more to tell our story. You hear me on the podcast a lot. We are limited by, our budget. There's some scripts out there that, the ones that I'm writing now, are quick one location horror movies, because it's just the budget that we have. If we had access to, donations or people that or more interested in our stuff, I think we could tell like better stories. I do have better scripts out there that we can tell. They just need like more locations and more effects. So I think it'd be beneficial, as the fans are going to get cooler movies, and, I get the opportunity to work on cooler stuff. I mean, that being said, like none of this money is going into my pocket. Like the film industry, essentially, I have a day job for a reason that pays my bills. And this is all the money that I put into this, my own money, is just a passion project, because this is just what I want to do. And to see a community grow out of that is just great. So, if you guys do decide, and we do decide to go with the Kickstarter Indiegogo, all the money's going to these projects, and none of it's going to go into my pocket or Kel's pocket. It's just straight back into it. And I think that's important too. I think you should know where your money's going to and what it's going to be spent on. And if we do this stuff, it'll be very clear on exactly what we spend our money on, and, what value in return you're going to get from it.
I completely agree. And that's the biggest thing for us, because we do get a lot of times, like it was something that brought up all the time, like, why aren't you guys on Kickstarter? Why aren't you guys doing it? And, like you said, we wanted to make sure we had a product that people could be proud of. People could say, I supported this, I was part of this. And, the level of involvement we have with our community now, they make it really clear that they want to do it. But as you were mentioning, we're quickly scaling and growing. We've never done Kickstarter. We do a Kickstarter and we get, an X value for it. And we understand, okay, well, if we can do this and everyone's happy with the merch they got, they're happy with supporting us, and they want to do it again, and we add more people, that's then how you look at scaling and building things. And I just kind of want to harp back to, as we go ahead and end this podcast episode, I think one of the biggest things I'm seeing now as we're at this point is, again, it's just all the experience you have from making this amount of movies allows us to see kind of the shifting pieces of where we can monetize better, what avenues we can take, having a community for feedback. So I think I just kind of want to, reach one more time back to what we think the most critical thing is just do the projects, just finish them, get them out there as much as possible, because heading into distribution and heading into the Kickstarter element, we have really good indicators. We did it on an idea that was before. We have a community now. We're exploring an alternate source of revenue for it. All of these things are kind of hitting at this one point. But this point, if you look at it, was 5 years in the making from 2017. So do you want to comment right now, just a little snapshot in history going into the final phases of The Haunting of the Murder House, how you're kind of feeling just with the overall production? Because I think, in my opinion, Girl and Cabin 13 and this were two very big steps up towards the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, my goal into this was to just make a better movie than Girl in Cabin 13. And I think the screenplay was better. I think the movie was shot better. I think we have better special effects. I think the editing process was better. Um, so no matter what happens after this, I feel good with the process. I did what I wanted to do, and that's just pretty much it. Any kind of um monetary gain after this obviously is going to get thrown back into another movie, but it's just the cherry on top. If this movie, completely bombs, I'm going to try and reverse engineer and see why exactly people didn't like it. And just try and avoid those mistakes again. So once again, it's just, what Kel said, I wouldn't have this feedback. I wouldn't have this opportunity. And it's giving me an opportunity to look at this whole production from screenwriting to filmmaking to editing from a top down level, which I think you can only do that if you complete a project. If you're still stuck in one of those phases, you're never going to be able to give yourself harsh and critical feedback and learn from your mistakes. And it's one of the reasons that we suffered with the last two movies that we did with the Hateful Eight, number 7 and 8, was because we had so many movies in post, we just weren't completing projects. And when we were doing that, we were making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And I think now we've got the model where we've completed it, we've moved on, we understand, and we're going to get better. We're going to learn from our mistakes.
Yep, that's it. I mean, building that base product, having a solid plan from the very beginning, business mindset all the way through, with the editing mindset for the production element of it, really kind of allows us to do more and to do better when it comes to all of these things. And one thing I've talked about in past podcasts episode was, with the delay and everything, it's really tough for us to get kind of like a guidance. But I think we have a lot of things in the pipeline just because we have Shapeshifter in the pipeline now. And in my opinion, it's the best movie we've done because, again, I see it kind of through that process, and I'm ready to wave that flag already just because we had a lot of improvements. So, we really do have kind of a lot going on right now in the sense of we have Shapeshifter in the pipeline. I'm ready to already say, hey, that's the best one that we've done so far, just because I've seen where the others have been in the rough. But we're just going to get so much more knowledge from, more information on Girl in Cabin 13, going through the distribution route with the Murder House, editing Shapeshifter, finishing the next project. So really, it feels like that flywheel is kind of moving a little bit for us. And I think the biggest thing of all the hard work we're putting on now is by the time it's 6 months from now, how much more experience will we have? We'll have another finished movie. We'll have another film movie. We'll have a release project. And I think the biggest thing I want to touch on right now is why you have to keep working, because in this industry, it's so delayed that as long as you're working every day, and if you continue to work at it in 6 months, I mean, we won't even be able to understand the amount of knowledge we have in 6 months than what we'd have now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, he brings up a good point. I think the way you're looking at this, or at least the way I'm looking at it, is in 6 months increments. So we're in June right now when we're releasing this podcast. My mindset is essentially in December. I'm like, all right, well, when we're going to close out this year, we should have, Girl in Cabin 13 still doing very, very well. We should have about 3 paychecks from that one under our belt. We should have the Murder House completely completed and uploaded, and we should probably get our first check from the Murder House. If it releases in October, we should get it in December to close out the quarter. the Shapeshifter, which has probably a good chance, depending on what we're going to do with it, distribution wise, might have a good chance of actually being released before the Murder House does, just because we're going to maybe try and do a different distribution option with that one. And then I have full plans to shoot a movie in late July, early August. Want to shoot another movie in October, and then hopefully, if I could squeeze one more in, December, I'm completely down to do it. So, looking at myself in December, I'll have pretty much 3 movies that are going to be making money. So actively making revenue streams from 3 movies. I'm going to have shot 4 movies this year. And we're still actively looking at trying to get some of our older stuff past quality control and bundled up and try and get it to, some streaming platforms. And they may not be the best streaming platforms, but our goal is to just get them out there for our fans. Just if they make a couple of bucks here and there every month, I'd be totally happy with that. But I'm more concerned with just visibility for our fans. Dropbox is giving me a little bit of trouble at this time. So we're just, trying to get them back so everyone could just, enjoy these movies and see the journey that we've made. But I think if you can go in there and say, look, I've made 4 movies. I have 3 new releases this year that are generating income checks. And then I have, the other 8 movies that we did that are just for the fans essentially. But if they can buy me a cup of coffee or, a beer or a drink at the lodge, it's all beneficial. So that would be what I'm really hoping to, accomplish in December, and just really be able to reward the fans. That's like my biggest thing. It's just try and come up with new ways to just build our community and reward the people who are, being so nice and, giving us our time or giving their time to us, as far as like being invested in this process, giving us feedback and just, words of encouragement, because this thing is very difficult what we're trying to do. And it's just nice to see people who like our stuff. It's very motivational.
I mean, I completely agree. Like, I think the hard part is like, I couldn't even forecast, like looking back now, it's June. If you asked me in January, because we didn't really have anything start until January. We started the Discord in March. Now I have 1,300 people, and the quality of people there, like all of this stuff, I never even could have predicted. So I think the coolest thing with it is we now understand that, hey, the most valuable thing is going to be the experience. And the only thing you can do is just work through the process. But we're very motivated. We're going to be pushing forward really, really fast. And again, we're still not doing this full time. So, the way to kind of look at it now is we're getting as much experience out there so we can do right by our fans, do right by our community. As we grow together, it just becomes easier and easier for us to make more movies, to cast more roles for our fans. But it's definitely something where, it feels like we are getting a lot more momentum and a lot more movement. Hopefully we'll have Mo step up to the plate with The Haunting of the Murder House. He'll knock one out of the park for us, and we'll just continue making movies. I mean, it's what we love to do. And regardless what happens, we're going to continue to make movies. So that's just going to be the way things are. But I know with the community behind us, it's only a matter of time before we're really ramping up. So I'm really excited for it. That's going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of the podcast. Again, you can be part of this amazing community that I continue to talk about. We'll always talk about. You just got to go ahead, join our Discord channel. We have links in our bio, so be sure to check that out. As always, you can take a look at The Girl in Cabin 13 on Tubi for free. You can also take a look at our other episodes or their movies on Apple iTunes or YouTube. So be sure to take a look at that. And until then, have a good one.